This is October 24th, 2009. We're in Simi Valley, California, and we're talking with John Lawton. John retired as General Manager of Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, very involved in Colorado River issues at the time. John, thank you very much for taking part in this oral history project for the Colorado River Board.
My pleasure.
We probably need to tell people right off the bat, how old are you?
I'm 90-something, 96 it says over there.
96 it says over there. And you retired from Metropolitan Water District when?
Well, must be 30-some years ago.
Yeah, I want to say late 1970s, 78 or 79 if I recall correctly. Is that too late? Was it before?
79 is too late. It was before 79.
Okay, and you were followed by Evan Griffith at MWD, right? Well, let me ask you, John. Let's go way back when you went to school, and why did you decide to become an attorney?
Well, I went to school Glendale back in the. Gee, must be the set. Can't remember the year now.
Well, that's right.
Came to California in 27.
1927. From where?
From Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and lived here ever since. I worked in Glendale most of the time, and acted as city attorney for, I think, Glendale for a few years, and then several years at Fresno.
So you went from Glendale as a city attorney to Fresno.
I think went from Fresno to city attorney. I went from Glendale as assistant city attorney to Fresno as city attorney, and then back to Glendale.
Oh, okay. And did you go from Glendale to Metropolitan, or were there other steps?
It went. You're getting back a little point where it's fuzzy, but I went from between the two jobs and to Metropolitan.
Okay. So you spent most of your career then at either the city of Glendale or at Metropolitan. Were you obviously you were at the really old MWD building downtown. We were just going back to establish your career at the city of Glendale and then Metropolitan Water District. You went to Metropolitan as an attorney, as a staff attorney?
As an attorney.
Okay. And do you recall your progression then at MWD up through general manager? I mean, you progressed quite nicely.
I was general counsel for, I can't remember. I just know that I went through the cities up into Metropolitan.
Okay. And so you became general counsel, which is the top legal position at Metropolitan.
And I think down below that I'd been general counsel for the cities.
Okay. By the way, where did you go to law school? Just
Bolt Hall of Law.
Bolt Hall?
Hall of Law.
Okay, right. Very good. Let's get down to specifics then, and I'd like to talk about your recollections while you were at Metropolitan of Colorado River issues that were facing Metropolitan while you were there.
Yeah.
And
There were all sorts of issues, and I can't remember specifically any of the issues, but you mentioned one, I probably.
Okay, that's fine. One of the things that came up during the mid-1970s, around 1975, was water for a nuclear power plant out in the desert.
Yeah.
Do you recall that?
Faintly.
And what the concerns were at the time?
No, I don't know what. All I know is you built a power plant, you had to get it out of the cities, and out of the city there's lots of water in the Metropolitan Water District system, and so that to provide power, which was a primary source of energy for the cities, uh, we felt it was not no more than right that we provide the power for the cities. We were providing the water, provide the power.
So Metropolitan then was asked to provide water for cooling
Right.
for these power plants. And some of your early writings, I discovered, indicated that Southern California Edison was looking for about 40,000 acre feet of water from the Colorado River Aqueduct. And as that conversation was going on with Edison, the the San Diego Gas and Electric Company and the LADWP also came
Right.
to you and said, "Hey, we need some water for power plants out in the desert as well."
I remember all those things happened.
Uh, and so you were looking at the time you were looking at a demand of about 100,000 acre feet of water off the river. Do you recall what your thoughts were at the time with regard to giving up that much water out in the desert?
Well, giving it up was for the benefit of the people that live in our customers who live in the desert.
Uh, you mean the customer? You mean MWD customers, but also power customers.
Yeah.
Um, well, let me ask you if you recall how comfortable you were giving up that much water. What,
I wasn't uncomfortable. I felt that was the most important use of the water at the time.
okay, that's fair enough. Um, now you also write. Well, let me backtrack a little bit. There's a program going on right now with an engineer out of Las Vegas. His name is Mike Clinton, and you might
I know, Mike.
you know Mike, and you knew his dad, Frank Clinton,
Yeah.
who was also general manager
Yeah.
at MWD. And I should add that Mike is the subject of one of these oral histories that's on file, and so people can watch that if they want to. But by way of background, Mike is in Las Vegas right now. His office is in Las Vegas, and he's working toward a project that at least one project that he was working on would take saline water out of the Colorado River Aqueduct. It's Colorado River water, and it's
Yeah.
about 500, 600 parts TDS, and would desalt that and generate a little bit of power in the process, and then move the brine water down to the Salton Sea. And by doing that, he would, according to his calculations, he would improve water quality, generate some power, and add water to the Salton Sea, which you may recall is in a little bit of trouble because it's not getting enough water right now. Well, interestingly enough, you wrote about that very thing back in the 70s about.
I, I couldn't see any problem. I thought we could solve our problem just taking our wastewater, which was going away, and desalt it.
And where do you recall, where did that project go during your tenure at MWD?
I don't know. That was just about the time I retired. My feeling is that the water that came out of the sewage plant, was good for trees. It was good for lawns. It was good for plants of any kind outside, and for most everything else except drinking. And what did we say we were out of water? We just used the drinking water for drinking, and the sewage water for plants.
Okay, now, while we're on that subject, because you're really talking about a slightly different program than the one I was talking about, but that's fine, because you worked on them both.
Yeah.
In fact, one of your talks that you gave to AWWA, the American Water Works Association at the time, talked about that very issue of reclaiming water. Taking sewage, maybe not sewage water, but other kinds of wastewater, drainage and things like that, and reclaiming it. Metropolitan is now very much engaged in those activities, reclaimed water, and I should go back one step, and I'll remind you, the State Water Project began delivering water in 1972 to Metropolitan
Right.
while you were there. And one of the first uses of State Water Project, at least according to your writings, was a seawater barrier. State Water Project water was injected
Yeah.
along the coast to repel ocean water from coming in and fouling freshwater basins in the area. And so you wrote again in the mid to late 70s. I don't know the exact date, but you wrote that would be a perfect use for reclaimed water.
Yeah.
Instead of using potable.
That'd be much better. You hit the what? You could, by using the water to repel seawater. You're doing a great good.
Now, Metropolitan started doing that during your tenure or after you left? I mean,
just about after. At the time I left, that I'd been working on it, and I said, "This is a good program."
okay. So that was really, I mean, that program was really one of the things that you left at Metropolitan.
Yeah.
Let me remind you of another program that you left at Metropolitan, and you may not remember this, but you and Dick Balzerzak, who was assistant chief of operations at the time, co-authored a paper about small hydroelectric plants because you had pressure and pipelines throughout Metropolitan's distribution system, and it was being the pressure, which is an energy potential, was being wasted. And you and Dick wrote a paper about installing small, and I mean small, like maybe the size of your apartment here, to capture that power. Do you recall?
I remember the subject generally. Yeah.
Do you recall if I don't believe any of those were built while you were there? Now let me think about that. There was one that went into operation in 1978 or 1979. I guess it would have been right after you retired. It was called the Gregg Avenue Power Plant.
Which one?
The Gregg Avenue Power Plant. It was in Burbank. And that was the first one of these small hydroelectric plants that MWD built. Do you recall that, or was that after you left?
That must be after I left.
Okay. So essentially you and Dick and others, I mean you and Dick co-wrote the paper, but I'm sure it was a team effort. So you guys came up with this thought that that would be a heck of a thing to do. Well, as it turns out, just for your information, Metropolitan now has 15 of those small hydroelectric plants distributed throughout its whole service area. So that was another concept that you and the team that was there while you were there kind of pioneered.
You're not bad for a lawyer.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. How does a lawyer, or how do you specifically, how do you transition from the law, I mean, being general counsel, and now you're in charge of a large water district that distributes water and treats it, and I mean, you're doing all kinds of things that have little to do with the law.
I was a city attorney, and that was my background. And I guess when I was going to school, I had argued between going to law or engineering, and I couldn't. When I looked at the choices, the cost of engineering was greater than law.
You mean the tuition?
Just the cost to me, it was more costly to go to Caltech or Boston, one in Boston,
MIT or
MIT. And so I selected the law. I went to Bold Hall Law in Berkeley, and that's how I got in.
So you made an economic decision at the time, but you always retained that interest in,
Yeah.
in the engineering side of things?
I've always been interested in the engineering.
Was that, did you have any difficulties while you were at Met working with the engineers?
No,
Because, you know, they're going, oh, shit, that attorney doesn't know what he's talking about.
no,
But you got along with,
no problem.
no problem.
I always just told them what I thought. They listened.
Well, when you think back over your career, do you consider yourself an attorney or a water guy? What? Or both?
Or both. Both.
Okay. You and I ran across each other for the first time in the early 1980s. You had retired not too long ago at the Colorado River Water Users Association, which met in Las Vegas each December. And you attended those meetings for many years.
That's right.
After you,
all the time I was involved in water.
but even after you retired,
Yeah,
you still attended.
for a while.
And let me ask you, why did you do that?
When you get old, you don't have as much enthusiasm about moving from where you are to where the meetings are.
Well, no, my question is, why did you continue attending those meetings with the Colorado River Water Users Association after you retired? Because you did that for a lot of years.
But I had spent years on the policies and I was interested in them, and I would have kept on going if it had been convenient for me to attend.
Right. Um, did anything happen with regard to Colorado River issues after you retired that surprised you, or you thought wasn't a particularly good idea? I'll give you a couple of thoughts. I mean, after Evan Griffith left, then he was succeeded by Carl Baranki.
Yeah.
And Carl made a deal with the Imperial Irrigation District over transferring conserved water from Imperial to Metropolitan. I think you recall that deal. Did you have any thoughts about that at the time?
I think any way you can expand the use of, or expand your source, that expanded MWD sources. And I felt that was a good idea.
Okay. Do you recall your relationship with Imperial or Palo Verde Irrigation District while you were there? Good, bad?
They're all, my recollection of good.
Okay. So,
I wasn't mad at them. They weren't mad at me at the time.
well, that went back and forth after you left. Went back and forth for a while. I mean, they were mad at Met, and Met was mad at them, and then they weren't, and then they were. So, but while you were there, relationships were really pretty good.
I think they're pretty good.
While you were at Met, MWD began taking delivery of State Water Project water, 1972. Can you go back there in your mind and think about? I mean, that was a good thing for Met. Was that a big deal at the time, 1972, when you first started getting those deliveries?
Well, from a standpoint of a water supplier, that was a big deal.
Did it take some pressure off of the Colorado River Aqueduct at the time, or?
We weren't as concerned about what was going on in the Colorado as we were as state water projects. There's more water coming in.
Right. You also, with regard to the State Water Project, I'm going to read. Well, no, I'll get to that in a minute. You may not recall, but you also wrote about the Delta, the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta. And apparently there was a little bit of a fight going on between the state and the federal government while you were there. This would have been the mid-70s, about the operation of the Delta. And some people were accusing the Bureau of Reclamation of destroying the delta, and the state wanted to run all of the projects. You may recall, there are two projects, two
Yeah.
large projects in the delta. One is the Central Valley Project, which is the federal government, and the other one is the State Water Project, which is the state of California. And apparently, while you were at MWD, the state of California wanted to run both projects. They didn't want the feds meddling in the delta. You recall any of that
I remember a little bit about it.
tussle? Were you engaged in that in any way? I mean, some of what you wrote was pretty strong with regard to how the delta should operate.
I don't have a recollection of what the issues were now. But it was a north-south problem.
As it is today.
Yeah.
It's interesting in reviewing some of your writings, one of the things you talked about, now keep in mind this is 2009 today. I'm going back to 1974, and you were writing about a peripheral canal, which is what they're talking about today, because it was never built.
Yeah.
Do you recall your thoughts about water? You characterized the peripheral canal as necessary for one, water conservation, and number two, water quality.
I can remember the in general, but not anything specific.
Okay. In 1980, then, just 6 years later, the peripheral canal had been. Now you had retired by then, but you were still active. The peripheral canal had been approved by the legislature, but it was subjected to a referendum by the voters, and the voters rejected it. They turned the bill around, and it was not built. Do you have any thoughts
No.
at that time about that's not a very good thing or that's a bad thing?
I just know that it happened, but I don't know what my thoughts were about it.
Okay. All right. So well, let's.
My problem was I was trying to get the water from Met. So everything I did was tainted by my goal of getting water from Met, and that didn't get water from Met.
Okay, let's expand on that. Why? I mean, maybe the answer is obvious, but I want to drill into your brain anyway. Why did you need more water from Met? You had the Colorado River Aqueduct.
I didn't think the sources were unlimited. When you get a big operation like Met, you got to think further than just is now all right. You got to get plan for the future, but the things that are for the future have to be built now. And we weren't ready for these other things.
So, you want me to stop here and get a sip of water? Okay, we took a break there for a sip of water. Speaking of water, I mean, it makes you thirsty when you talk about it this much. But you were talking about planning for the future, and that was your concern with regard to the State Water Project. While you were general manager, Metropolitan had an entitlement, or maybe entitlement's the wrong word. They had available to them about 1.2 million acre feet from the Colorado River. But you may recall from your legal background that Met's apportionment in the contract is really only 550,000 acre feet, and that they had been using water unused by other states for a lot of years. What did you ever have a concern that Metropolitan would one day be reduced to their actual entitlement, 550?
I'm not sure that I ever pinned it down to that one particular use. I was always concerned with getting assured supply of water for the future, and you had to keep looking at the most unlikable places to see whether it's possible to develop or use a drinking water. It's just that simple.
Yeah. Did you look anywhere else other than the State Water Project? Were there other?
We were looking at everything, not just the State Water Project.
Okay. Take that a little further if you can. When you say everything.
Well, there was water in the north part of California that got involved with the the pipelines were taking care of all these different people. I can't remember specifically.
Do you remember conversations about water from out of state, like from Washington State or Oregon,
I
or?
don't think I ever thought that far ahead. The problems were too great.
Okay, because one of your writings indicates that you had been asked to look at water from Washington, the state of Washington, and you wrote about the power costs of moving that water, if you could even build the project, but the cost of moving that water would be tremendous. Do you recall that?
I can well recall that sort of discussion, but not the details of it.
Okay, but that project, I mean, it came to naught.
Yeah.
And I think part of that was just your thoughts and the thoughts of others at MWD at the time, that it was just incredibly expensive and just was really not possible. So maybe if for no other reason, we just put that one to rest, because it comes up every once in a while.
Does it?
It's, people think, oh my gosh, California's going to go to the whatever river and steal water from other states. And I think you wrote well while you were at Met that the costs and the economics of doing that just really aren't there. So and icebergs, I know you heard that story that why don't we just float some icebergs down here from Alaska or the North Pole? Again, a costly event to say the least. Let me ask you about what you've seen in California, especially in Southern California, over your lifetime, in terms of change and in terms of growth. I'll remind you that in 1970, the population was projected in 1990. Let me restate that so I don't confuse anybody. A projection was made in 1970 that the population of Southern California in 1990, 20 years later, would be between 13 and 15 million people. That's some pretty substantial growth.
Yeah.
Did you embrace those numbers in terms of looking for water supply, or did you think they were a little too high? Or
I was under the pressure to meet whatever demand might come up, and whether one group was right or another one was right. I wanted to take care of the demands of everybody. Yet, I didn't say that quite right.
well,
I just wanted to be able to take care of everybody, and
so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you would assume, in putting together a water supply for everybody, you would probably assume the higher number, the higher population estimate, just to be on the safe side.
yeah,
You would want to have provided water for the 15 million people that were expected to be
Right.
here in 1990. So you weren't overly concerned about whether the numbers were right or wrong. You just wanted to make sure that there was enough water here for everyone.
right.
As it turned out, the population of Southern California in 1990 uh, was, in fact, about 16 million people. So they weren't too far off with that projection. And the population today, in 2009, is it's over 18 million people in Southern California. Did you ever imagine during your career that there would be that many people living here in
Yeah,
Southern California?
yeah,
So you assumed that to be the case.
yeah.
Is it going to continue to grow in your mind?
I think it will. California is unique in itself, and part of California that's in MWD service area is very strong in growth. And I attribute the growth to the strength of the environment that exists in Southern California.
You're talking about the weather, jobs.
Jobs, everything else.
Right. Well, if Southern California is to continue to grow, as you indicate it will, where's that water coming from? How do we meet that growth now?
Well, that's where I was when I retired. And my feeling is that it was very simple to extend our water supply by more extensive reuse of water. And if you look at the uses of water, you could put water in the pipes that could meet all the needs of all the lawns and all the irrigation and all the normal things, everything except drinking from sewage water. And you didn't need fresh water. So the more water you could reuse was added to your supply.
Okay, reclaimed water is going on today, we know that, at a fairly low level in terms of amount. Do you think people will be willing to pay the cost of reclaiming water to, as you say, to extend that water supply?
I don't think that you're saying that they wouldn't be willing to pay anything. I think they would be willing to pay whatever it costs.
Okay, because reclaimed water by its very nature tends to be more expensive than.
It's more, but not that much more.
Okay, so putting on your prediction hat, you would expect, or you would want, I suppose, reclaimed water to become a more important.
I would think reclaimed water should be the most important to the people who are using the water primarily for drinking, and that if they can make reclaimed water available to do what they're now using drinking water for, would extend our water supply.
Okay, well that makes a lot of sense. Let's change the subject just a little bit here to energy because it's related. You said in 1975 that you were actually writing a counter argument to a member of the State Energy Commission in 1975, and that person said that that the growth curves, as we just discussed, the growth curves were wrong, and that energy conservation would be able to handle a lower level of growth that this person expected. And let me see if I can restate that a little bit. The person said that Southern California was not going to grow as rapidly as the growth curves indicated, and that he didn't see the need for additional energy or additional water projects. And his position was that conservation, if people would just conserve water,
That's I'll agree with them if you can get them to conserve. It's a matter conservation is depends upon the motivation of people, and if they don't conserve, you don't have the water.
Uh, do you think that well, let me rephrase that. Do you think that conservation would take care of all of the future demand or only a part of it?
I suspect that the kind of close to take care of all of it. I can't. I'm not able to quite focus on it.
Well, let's try this. One of the things that you wrote about was water pricing. Because Metropolitan, while you were there, was supported in some measure by taxes, property taxes, and they still are to a lesser degree, but it's not a critical part of their income stream. Um, but you wrote that the cost of water should be borne or paid for entirely by the water user. Otherwise, they're going to waste water. And let me rephrase that. If you said that if people don't pay for the full cost of water, if they are subsidized by taxpayers, then they're going to waste water
Right.
because there's no incentive to conserve. Is that?
That's about right.
I mean, so I characterized that thought
Yeah.
reasonably well. And so your position then and now would be that everyone should pay the full cost of delivering water to them.
Right.
Okay, now that's a little bit of a trap, and I didn't mean to trap you, but I just wanted to see if I could stir some memories. Agricultural users in California or throughout the state, they don't pay the full cost of water. You may recall that the Bureau of Reclamation, the federal government, sells federal water at below its cost, and indeed, even in California, if you go down to the agricultural districts, Imperial and Palo Verde and Coachella, those farmers don't pay the full cost either. So now you've got agriculture involved here. What do you think about charging them the full cost of water? Do you think that would work?
I think more maybe charge them more than they're paying now on a long range program to bring them into where they should be. You can't do it. You do things like that over 10 or 20 years, not instead of 1 or 2. And you can get there, but over time, you if you can persuade the farmers that they've been getting water they should be getting, they'll conserve.
Is it your experience that agricultural water could be conserved? I mean, there is some waste out there.
Well, there's no question about it. If you got it, you use it.
Why do you say there's no question about it? I mean, you sound very positive about that.
I'm just positive that there's waste of water. We're wasting it all the time.
Okay. Not just agriculture, but everybody.
That's right.
Yeah.
But you just have to have a will to do these things, and you have to. It takes a lot of training of the mass to get them to do what they should do.
Yeah. Have you stayed current with the drought that's going on right now? I mean, it's been, I believe, about 7 years now that we're in below normal rainfall.
Not. I just know that we're not getting much rain.
Okay. And of course, you live in an apartment complex here, so you don't need to worry about watering the lawn and all that kind of stuff. Okay, let me read something to you. It's a paragraph. You wrote this about 34 years ago, and so let me get your reaction to it because it's critical to a discussion that's going on right now, today, in the state legislature, having to do with the Delta and water quality. And you wrote this. I believe it is essential that we de escalate the verbal and legal wars between the state and the federal government and get on with negotiating reasonable standards for protecting the Delta and the two great water projects, meaning the Central Valley Project and the State Water Project. Only in that manner can we really protect and advance the public interest of the state.
Right.
Now that's something that you wrote at a time when the Delta wasn't in anywhere near as much trouble as it is today. Are you troubled by the fact that nothing ever really got done in the Delta?
It's not going to get done until there's a crunch. um, I don't. The people that have it don't want to give it up. The people that want it, I guess they're willing to pay for it, but the people that have it don't want to give it up, no matter what.
Since this is an argument in the legislature right now, today, and since you wrote this 35 years ago, and not much has happened since then,
Huh?
what do you think it's going to take to resolve both the water quality and water quantity issues in the Delta? If you were king of the water world, what would you do?
I would first of all work on the conservation, reusing the wastewater by giving it treatment sufficient to be reused. And that's in our hands. It takes some money, and you have to determine where when the money gets too much. But right now, there's a lot of water that we could afford to reclaim.
Okay, do you think some of that reclaimed water might be used for agriculture instead
Oh, it
of?
could be used for everything except drinking.
Okay, and I'm talking about widespread agriculture. I mean.
That's right. And I'm talking about everything except drinking.
Uh, One of the, I'm not sure that you were ever involved in this, so if you weren't, you weren't. One of the problems with reclaiming water in the Imperial Valley, for example, is that drainage water from the farms in Imperial goes to the Salton Sea, and it keeps the Salton Sea level up and keeps it reasonably. I say reasonably fresh. It's not fresh at all. I mean, it's salty water.
Yeah.
But the drainage water prevents it from becoming even more saline than it might. And so my question to you would be, as a water guy, my question would be, if you divert that drainage water from the farms in the Imperial Valley and reuse it, reclaim it, as you suggest, then you prevent that water from flowing to the Salton Sea,
Right.
and the Salton Sea gets worse.
Right.
There's a conundrum. How do you deal with that conundrum?
Salton Sea is a sink. It's going to get worse. You can't have a Salton Sea in the middle of an unsalted area.
So your position would be just to let the Salton Sea do whatever it's going to do, and that's the way it goes.
That's right.
Well, that certainly speaks to your thought about the value of that water. That's
Right.
right. Unfortunately, it flies in the face of pardon me, the environmentalist community and federal law and state law and a bunch of other laws. But your thought is shared by, of course, a lot of people. Because
Hello?
uh, John, we're going to change tracks here just a little bit. I'd like to ask you if you remember working with anyone in particular while you were at Met. One of the people, of course, was Carl Baranke, who eventually he really followed in your footsteps because he became general counsel, and then he became general manager, just as you did. What are your thoughts about Carl? Do you remember working with him?
I thought he was a very fine man. I, I have no qualms.
Um, and how about did you stay in contact with Evan Griffith, who was the general manager in between you and Carl?
Evan, my recollection of Evan Griffith was he's too much of an engineer and doesn't have an ability to expand beyond the engineering. And the Rocky, on the other hand, he has a wide open field.
Okay, well that's probably a good characterization. Do you remember? How about Bob Will? Bob Will was also general
Bob
counsel.
Will was the lawyer in Washington. He was knowledgeable, and I suspect doing the job he was doing very effective. I don't know whether much about him.
Okay. Did you work closely with Hank Mills or
A little,
just a little bit?
yeah.
Okay. I believe I've forgotten when Frank Clinton was there. Did you know Frank Clinton, that Mike
I
Clinton's
did.
dad? And he was also general manager.
Right.
And you were there at the time. I guess
Right.
you were in the legal department. Did you worked well with him, with
Right.
Frank? But he was an engineer.
Right.
Why was he different from Ev Griffith? They were both engineers.
Well, Frank, I felt was bigger than an engineer. He had blossomed out into all the supporting fields, and I don't think Evan Griffith had. I don't know whether I'm. In other words, Griff had not expanded to the same extent that Frank had.
Okay. So Frank Clinton was just able to take a much broader view of what was going on. Do you recall one of the important components of Metropolitan Water District is its board of directors, which was quite large when you were there. It's since been reduced. It's 36 or 37 members now, and I think it was 50 or 51 when you were there. Do any of the members of the board did any members of the board leave a mark on you, leave an indelible mark on
Now,
you?
I can't even remember who they were.
Yeah. I don't recall who would have been chairman. Earl Blaze was
Remember Earl?
from
Burbank.
Burbank, right? Was he chairman of the board while you were there? Was Earl chairman of the board while you were there? Or?
He could have been.
Okay. I think Lois Krieger was probably there.
Right.
You remember Lois?
Yep.
She was she was the first woman on the board, as I recall.
Right.
Any thoughts about her? I mean, do you remember your relationship with Lois? I mean, as the first woman on the board.
Right. Her husband Jim.
Right. Okay. So I mean, they were. It was probably a pretty good board while
They
you
were
were there.
water people.
Yeah. Okay.
From the standpoint of the manager, it didn't bother me. So we got along fine. At least I think we did.
Well, you were successfully general manager, so I'm sure there's something there that you got says that you got along with them well. Has anything surprised you with regard to development on the Colorado River over time? I mean, I'll just throw some concepts out at you, and you see what you think. Imperial Irrigation District agreed to be quantified because when you were general manager, they were entitled to an unquantified amount of water. I'll remind you that Palo Verde Irrigation District gets the first priority from the river, and then Imperial got the next priority after Palo Verde used however much it could use. And historically recently, Imperial agreed to accept a hard number, a quantified number as their entitlement rather than an open-ended number. Did that surprise you, or?
No, I don't remember the issues that were involved there that they were going on, and along with. But when you talk about the Colorado River, you're talking about a whole bunch of things that are going on at once.
That's true. Did that give you fits while you were at Met, while you were GM? I mean, you got so many balls in the air at one time.
No, it's just you look at each one as how does that affect Matt? How does that affect Matt?
Okay, so I mean, clearly that was your
That's
focus. How about the growth of Las Vegas and their water demand? The growth in Las Vegas. Has that surprised you that their water demands have gone up?
No, there's obviously a reason that people are in Las Vegas, and when people go there, they need water.
Okay, and I presume you'd have the same thoughts about Arizona, because Metropolitan used Arizona's unused entitlement for a lot of years, and Arizona is now taking its full entitlement.
I've never stopped to think about those entitlements encroaching. I was never under a feeling that Arizona's encroaching on Mets. So there's, for whatever reason, they may be a threat to us, but I didn't feel it was a great threat.
Okay, and do you recall that Colorado is divided, upper basin and lower basin,
Yep.
and each basin is entitled to 7.5 million acre-feet of water? It's not quite that clean, but for our purposes, let's use those numbers. Were you involved in any discussions with the upper basin while you were at MWD?
I don't think so. There were going on, but I didn't get involved in them.
Okay. So you were focused on the lower basin's
Right.
7.5 million, and then MWD's share of that 7.5
Right.
million. That was your
Right.
focus. Okay. Well, let me just ask you a final question here. What have we forgotten to talk about, or what in your memory is important? There must be a few tidbits back there that come to your mind over your career at MWD. What didn't I ask, and what the purpose? And let me just get this on tape. I mean, the purpose of this tape is that future historians, attorneys, water people, whoever, will have an opportunity to view this video, and they'll have a chance to see what was in your brain and all of the other people that we've done the oral histories of while you were there, while you were in the water biz. And so my final question to you, I guess, is what stands out to you as being really important, either over the course of your career or with regard to providing water for Southern California?
Well, all I can say is that in order for Southern California to get water in an increasing portion of the water, we've got to be treating our water that we're using as, as, as carefully as the others are. In other words, they aren't conserving the water and we're using it. We're all conserving water and using it.
So you,
That's a simple.
right. So I guess you would say then that really conservation is the key to at least Southern California's future.
Right.
Okay. Anything else?
Not that I can think of.
Not that you can think of? Okay. Well, John, we'll call an end to this interview then. It's been about an hour, believe it or not, a very fast hour for me. And we thank you for your time, and thanks again, and use water wisely.